$600 billion. That's how much the 5 largest tech companies committed to AI infrastructure for 2026 alone. For context, the entire Apollo program cost $170 billion in today's dollars. We're spending 3 Apollos on data centers this year. First week of February 2026. Earnings season. Every major cloud provider reported, and every single one said the same thing. We're spending more. We're spending a lot more. And we're not slowing down. Every stock dropped. Higher spends, bigger drops. Wall Street looked at $600 billion and said, prove it. Either the market is wrong or the biggest companies on Earth are burning cash on a bet that won't pay off. Someone has to be. This is the infrastructure story, not the AI features, not the model benchmarks, the concrete, the copper, the silicon underneath all of it. Amazon, $200 billion projected for 2026, up from $132 billion last year, a 52% increase. AWS runs a third of the internet's cloud infrastructure. When Amazon says AI workloads are growing faster than expected, that's direct telemetry, not prediction. $200 billion buys data centers, custom chips, network fabric, cooling systems, power contracts, and the land underneath all of it. Google, $175 to $185 billion, up from $91.4, nearly doubled in 12 months. Google builds its own TPU chips, designs its own network hardware, has its own submarine cables. Vertical integration reduces dependency, increases control. Meta, $115 to $135 billion. That range tells you something. Even Meta isn't sure how much it'll need. Meta open-sourced Llama. Their inference runs on everyone else's hardware too. They're building infrastructure for a model they give away free. Oracle, $50 billion. The one most people forgot. Larry Ellison didn't forget. Oracle runs enterprise databases. Every Fortune 500 payroll, supply chain, financial system. AI agents need database access. Oracle already has the keys. Add them up, over $600 billion from 4 companies. And we haven't counted Microsoft yet. For scale, total global semiconductor Capex in 2024 was about $200 billion. AI infrastructure alone now triples that. But every company doubled down independently. Amazon didn't call Google. Meta didn't coordinate with Oracle. Same conclusion. Arrived at separately. When 5 competitors independently reach the same conclusion, that's signal, not groupthink. Market intelligence arriving at consensus. Wall Street's logic is simple. Where's the revenue? Show us the customers paying enough to justify $600 billion in spending. AWS AI services generated roughly $50 billion in 2025. Google Cloud, about $40. Combined AI revenue is growing, but it's a fraction of the spend. Investors remember the dot-com bubble. Massive infrastructure spend. Fiber optic cables in the ground nobody used. The comparison haunts every earnings call, except those cables got used. Just not by the companies that laid them. The infrastructure outlasted the investors. Same might happen here. GPUs depreciate. A chip that costs $10,000 today is worth half that in 18 months. You're buying a depreciating asset at record prices. Average GPU utilization in most data centers hovers around 30 to 40%. You're paying for capacity that sits idle 2/3 of the time. Peak load happens during business hours, but you have to provision for peak. You can't rent GPUs just for Tuesday afternoon, unless agents run overnight. An agent doesn't sleep. Ship a task at 6 p.m., get results by 6 a.m. That fills the trough. Cloud architects have a saying, capacity you don't have when demand arrives is revenue you never get. You can't scale a data center in a week. A new data center takes 18 to 24 months from permit to production. If agent demand arrives in 12 months, you needed to start yesterday. A chatbot query takes 2 seconds and costs a fraction of a cent. An agent session runs for hours. Different unit economics entirely. Agents iterate. They plan, execute, evaluate, retry. Each cycle is an inference call. A 4-hour agent session might make thousands of calls. ChatGPT charges $20 a month. An agent that codes for you 8 hours a day? That's enterprise pricing, hundreds per seat, maybe thousands. 800 million ChatGPT users making quick queries. Now imagine 10% running agents for hours. The compute demand multiplies by orders of magnitude. That's the bet, not that AI chatbots grow, that AI agents replace workflows. Different demand curve entirely. Anthropic ships Opus 4.6 agent teams into PowerPoint. OpenAI's Codex runs for days building applications. Enterprise tools, not consumer toys. The agent launches happen the same week as earnings. That's not coincidence. The infrastructure spend is priced to the agent timeline. Then there's the entry nobody saw coming. SpaceX XAI filed FCC applications for 1 million satellite data centers. 1 million, not 1,000, not 10,000. 1 million compute nodes in low Earth orbit. Solar panels produce 5 times more power in space than on Earth's surface. No atmosphere, no clouds, no night cycle if you orbit right. Power is the real bottleneck. Every data center needs a small power plant. Land-based compute is hitting electrical grid limits in multiple states. New York lawmakers proposed a 3-year moratorium on new data centers. Grid strain, water usage, community impact. Regulation is catching up. SpaceX XAI merged February 2nd. Musk now owns the rockets, the satellites, the AI models, and the distribution network. Total vertical integration. Musk says 30 to 36 months before orbital AI compute becomes the most economical option. That puts it at mid-2028. Ambitious. Possibly delusional. Latency. Light takes time. Low Earth orbit adds 20 to 40 milliseconds round trip. For agentic workloads running for hours, that's noise. For real-time chat, painful. Orbital compute makes sense specifically for agents. Agents don't need millisecond latency. They need cheap, sustained compute. Space offers that. Nobody else can do this. You need reusable rockets at low cost per kilogram. SpaceX is the only company with that capability. That's the moat. Every discussion about AI infrastructure ignores the same constraint. Power, not GPU power, electrical power. A single GPU rack draws 30 to 40 kilowatts. A data center with 10,000 GPUs needs its own substation. At scale, you need power plant partnerships. Cooling. A large data center uses 5 million gallons of water daily. In drought-prone regions, that's a political problem, not just an engineering one. Amazon signed nuclear power deals in 2025. Microsoft restarted 3 Mile Island. Google contracted with Kairos Power. AI is rebooting nuclear energy. Nuclear runs baseload, 24/7, no intermittency. Data centers need constant power. The engineering fit is perfect. The political fit is difficult. Building a nuclear plant takes 10 to 15 years. AI infrastructure timelines are 18 months. The power supply can't keep up with demand. That's another reason Musk looks up. Orbital compute sidesteps grid constraints entirely. The sun is the power plant. AI infrastructure isn't distributed evenly. Northern Virginia hosts the largest concentration of data centers on Earth. 40% of U.S. cloud capacity sits there. Fiber connectivity, tax incentives, proximity to government contracts. The reasons are boring and foundational. Infrastructure follows bureaucracy. New builds are spreading. Texas, Ohio, Oregon, Canada. Places with cheap power, cold air for cooling, and governments that want the jobs. Local communities fight back. Noise, water consumption, grid strain, property values. A data center promises jobs but delivers 40 positions and a constant hum. Data sovereignty matters. European regulations demand European data centers. Asian governments require local compute. 600 billion isn't one market, it's 20. We haven't mentioned China. Their AI infrastructure spend is classified. But satellite imagery shows construction at a pace that matches or exceeds the West. U.S. export controls block top-tier GPU sales to China. China builds custom alternatives. The infrastructure race has a geopolitical layer nobody prices correctly. TSMC makes nearly every advanced AI chip. One company. One island. One earthquake away from a global compute crisis. That concentration risk is real. 3 scenarios. The bull case, the bear case, and the one nobody talks about. Bull case. Agents work. Enterprise adoption accelerates. Every knowledge worker gets an AI staff. Infrastructure demand exceeds what they're building. Spend was too low. Bear case. Agents plateau. Reliability isn't good enough. Enterprises pilot but don't deploy. GPU utilization stays at 30%. 600 billion depreciates. Third scenario. Efficiency wins. Models get smaller. Inference gets cheaper. You need 1/10 the compute. The infrastructure exists, but the demand shifts. DeepSeek showed this is possible. Competitive model performance at a fraction of the training cost. If inference follows the same curve, the infrastructure thesis breaks. Counterargument. Jevons paradox. When something gets cheaper, people use more of it. Efficient models mean more agents, not fewer GPUs. In all 3 scenarios, the company that controls both the model and the infrastructure wins. Vertical integration beats specialization when the market is uncertain. Google owns TPUs, Gemini, Cloud, Search Distribution, and Android. Amazon owns custom silicon, Bedrock, and AWS. That's why they're spending the most. Pure-play AI startups without infrastructure, they rent from the winners. Their margins shrink as the platform owners raise prices. Classic platform dependency. NVIDIA sells the picks and shovels. Every dollar of that 600 billion, a chunk goes to Jensen Huang. The arms dealer wins regardless of who wins the war. Unless Google's TPUs work. Unless Amazon's Trainium chips deliver. Unless custom silicon breaks NVIDIA's grip, that's the quiet war inside the loud one. Building infrastructure requires people. Data center architects, chip designers, power engineers, cooling specialists. The talent pool is finite. The hiring war is silent and vicious. 600 billion is a number. What does it actually buy? Hundreds of new data centers, millions of GPUs, thousands of miles of fiber, enough concrete to pave a highway from New York to Los Angeles. It buys employment. Construction workers, electricians, engineers, security guards. Then 40 people to run each facility. The jobs are real. They're just not many. 600 billion is an irreversible commitment. You can't unpour concrete. You can't unmanufacture chips. The bet is placed. Irrevocably. Every CEO said the same thing on their earnings call. We would rather overbuild than underbuild. The risk of missing the wave is worse than the cost of the bet. Underneath the press releases and the investor calls and the stock drops, something else is true. The construction has already started. Amazon has 20 new data center projects in permitting. Google has 15. They're not waiting for consensus, they're digging. The question isn't whether 600 billion is too much. The question is, what happens to the world when that infrastructure goes live? 1 million new GPUs means 1 million new agents can run simultaneously. That's not a product improvement. That's a labor force change. They poured the concrete. They ordered the chips. They signed the power contracts. The bet is placed. The only question left is whether we're ready for what they're building. 700 billion reasons to pay attention. And not a single one of them is a chatbot.